Hello, I'm Marc Scorca, and I'm happy to greet you from the National Opera Center here in New York City. The sounds of opera have been returning gradually to our halls, and last month we delivered our Leadership Intensive in person, following strict vaccine and testing protocols. We're trying to conduct as much business as possible from the Opera Center, even as we remain vigilant and flexible in the face of COVID variants. We've been on an amazing journey since my last report. A field known for its extremely long planning horizon has learned to improvise. Commissioning works, planning productions, and hiring singers takes years, until COVID. In a flash, our members looked around to identify available local resources, find new partners, and offer performances online and in person, in parks, drive-in movie theaters, tents, and on flatbed trucks. Our producing organizations and our artist colleagues discovered a new level of creativity, teamwork, and audience interest. In the process, we uncovered many more questions than answers, questions that will define our work over the next many months. What will be the mix between traditional in-theater productions, community performances, and digital projects? How will we recognize the centrality of artists to our success and move them further into the center of our work? Will we live up to our pledges to achieve greater equity and diversity across the opera industry? How will we demonstrate public value to honor the taxpayer support we've received and hope to receive in the future? Let's look at the first question about the shape of the new normal. Alternative programming attracted newcomers. Between 25% and 40% of audiences for these performances were new to file. The programming was, by and large, shorter, casual, self-guided, and inexpensive or free. Digital education programs reached teachers and students in rural areas never served by opera companies before. Streamed performances and opera films attracted a global audience. Much of this activity earns very little in terms of traditional sales, but this broader public service changes the narrative about our opera companies and overcomes the stereotype of our art form as stodgy and elitist. Can we resist the temptation to snap back to old habits that reconstruct the barriers to opera? Will current patrons increase their support to sustain this new level of accessibility? Will new donors be attracted to opera now that some of the negative stereotypes have been stripped away? How do we learn more about our audiences and our communities in order to make informed decisions? In terms of artists, we must acknowledge that they bore the brunt of postponed performances and canceled productions. But they were the first among us to exhibit their native creativity and exhibit their improvisational entrepreneurialism to bring us recitals from their living rooms, streamed conversations with their colleagues, and filmed projects. At the opening session of our online 2021 annual conference, the wonderful Larry Brownlee used vivid language to describe the onset of COVID as a free fall for artists, and a period at which they felt powerless. He was quick to produce his own opportunities and launched several programs, including Coffee and a Song, Sit Down with LB, and Lawrence Brownlee and Friends. As a board member of Opera Philadelphia, Larry explained that artists can be fierce advocates for the art form as they sit around the board table to preserve the very thing that inspired board members to support opera in the first place. Artists can remind us of the intrinsic value of our work and make sure it's at the very core of everything we do. More and more, we see active artists working with opera companies in advisory capacities. Will this continue? Are we willing to include artists in distributed decision-making to ensure the voice of creators and performers shapes our work? COVID was not the only defining event of 2020. The killing of George Floyd and so much other violence against our BIPOC colleagues led many of us into a long-delayed period of reflection and response. Many opera companies made bold statements, and some of them are beginning to show action, where they demonstrate their commitment to these words. Fellowships and training programs for BIPOC administrators in opera have been introduced at Opera Theatre of St. Louis, Los Angeles Opera, Seattle Opera, Manitoba Opera, and others. We'll explore these in a webinar this fall. At Opera America, while we continue our granting programs to support the work of women composers, we've launched our Idea Opera Grants and Idea Opera Residencies for BIPOC composers and librettists. A new leadership program for BIPOC administrators is modeled on our Women's Mentorship Program. Although we can't take credit for it, we celebrate that in Texas, the general directors of Austin Opera, Fort Worth Opera, Houston Grand Opera, and Opera San Antonio are women. These are early steps along the path to the field we want to create. Will we sustain our commitment to social and racial justice? Will we learn how to make newcomers feel really welcome inside our halls, our boardrooms, and our offices? Will we really make our industry more reflective of our country? To my fourth point about public value, let me emphasize that expanded public service is more important than ever. We've always been a part of the nonprofit sector based on our dedication to education. But since my last report to the field, our companies have benefited from tens of millions of dollars. I hesitate to say hundreds of millions until we conduct a rigorous survey this fall. But my rough estimate is that over $150 million has been devoted over the last year by the federal government to sustaining the opera sector alone. This is taxpayer money that comes with an obligation to serve the public, to make our work accessible as part of our commitment to lifting our communities from 18 months of worry and isolation. As I've written at the front of Opera America magazine, this unprecedented infusion of funds is not meant to benefit just opera lovers. It's meant to enrich the lives of all citizens, to preserve jobs, and to sustain the associated businesses that depend on our work. We'll continue to advocate for support of our sector at this level and for the permanent provision of unemployment benefits for contract and gig workers like our artists. That's a lot to think about. A hybrid future, centering artists in our work, fighting for racial justice, and amplifying our public service. How is opera doing? The answer is very well. Just take a look at the summer festivals that offered performances this season under very challenging circumstances. John Corigliano and Marc A's new opera, Lord of Cries, it's their first opera together, premiered at the Santa Fe Opera. Des Moines Metro Opera offered performances of one of the most frequently performed American operas of recent years, Fellow Travelers, by Gregory Spears and Greg Pierce. Opera Theatre of St. Louis reached back more than half a century to produce Highway 1 USA by William Grant Still and Verna Arvey. William Grant Still is called the Dean of African American Composers. Opera Maine's presentation of As One by Laura Kaminsky, Kimberly Reed, and Mark Campbell marked the opera's 46th production. Fall seasons, as far as they're announced, are filled with American operas. Philip Glass's Akhenaten returns to the Met following sold-out performances in 2019. Daniel Catan and Marcela Fuentes Barrain's Florencia en el Amazonas takes the stage at Lyric Opera of Chicago, as does Fire Shut Up in My Bones by Terence Blanchard and Kazi Lemons after its opening night run at the Metropolitan Opera. Janine Tesori and Tazewell Thompson's Blue, the best new opera of 2020 according to the Music Critics Association, starts the fall season at Michigan Opera Theatre. Dream of the Red Chamber by Bright Shang and David Henry Hwang returns to the San Francisco Opera after its very successful premiere performances several years ago. American opera is thriving and will continue to thrive. Thanks to the support of the Ann and Gordon Getty Foundation and other donors, we were able to waive organizational dues for fiscal year 2021 and 22, and to offer artists another year of complimentary membership. We've been delighted they've participated in our work so fully, and our membership has surged because of it. We've hosted hundreds of webinars and Zoom meetings with well over 10,000 member engagements. We are grateful to all of you for helping us keep the field unified and informed. This intensified service will continue. Fall forums will be offered to our company members virtually for the development, marketing, education, technical production networks. The January New Works Forum and February National Trustee Forum will take place in a hybrid form with both virtual sessions and in-person activities here at the National Opera Center. Opera Conference 2022 will take place in person in May in Minneapolis and via Zoom in June to make sure this essential convening is accessible to as many people as possible. Our board member, Graham Berwind, is helping underwrite the costs of attendance, but more on that soon. Thank you, Graham, and thank you to Ryan Taylor and his team at Minnesota Opera for working with us over the past year of delay. Our programs for singers, recording days, feedback auditions, career transitions, and others will return in person soon and in new virtual iterations. As I say in my governance workshops, learning is a fiduciary responsibility. All of us in opera have a duty to reflect on the last year and to learn from our experience. We can't snap to easy answers. We have to have the courage to live with important questions until the way forward becomes clear. Opera America will be with you every step of the way.